Hailing frequencies open, and welcome to Star Trek Discoverage, the live podcast that boldly goes into excruciating detail about this week's episode of Star Trek Discovery. I'm your host, Aaron Coker, aka Caliban, and you know what's worse than Rigelian rutabagas? Ligonian lubegas. Not great. Joining me on the show as usual is my co-host. She's also the co-host of the Generations Geek podcast, a more or less family-friendly celebration of geekdom. It's Ella Pearson. Ella, welcome back to Discoverage.
Thank you.
It's great to have you back. It's great to be talking about Star Trek Discovery on a Thursday night, like the way it should be. Unless it's
exactly.
Prodigy or Picard or something else.
I know we're here. It seems like every Thursday for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think pretty much forever.
And like you said, it's how it should be. Forever. We're locked in.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine my Thursdays. Actually, for real, I can't even tell you the shock of when the season ends and it's a Thursday and I'm like, I don't have anything to do. So really this is
what do I do on a Thursday?
I'm married to Star Trek Thursdays.
That's why Thursday's such a good idea for or a good time to put a TV show out. You know, they had it nailed back in the 90s with the musty TV on Thursdays. Because what are you going to do on a Thursday? Nothing. You're just saving up for Friday at that point.
Exactly. On Thursday, you're mad that it's not Friday.
Right. And so you got a little Star Trek or another show to keep you happy. Yeah. Speaking of other shows in the Star Trek universe, Alex Kurtzman, the producer of Star Trek and the star of Discovery, Sonequa Martin Green, were guests on a podcast recently, the Hero Nation podcast. And the Kurtz was asked if any of the 5 currently in production shows would ever cross over with each other. And he had a kind of indefinite answer. I think that he is, I won't read you his whole quote, but I think he's enthusiastic about it. But he talked about how he wants it to be intentional, not just, speaking of must-see TV, remember like when they'd have like Mad About You show up on Friends, you know, or like somebody from Seinfeld would show up on something else. He doesn't want it to be that. He didn't mention that. I'm bringing that in. But he was saying that he doesn't, he doesn't want it to be just a gamble that he wants to take randomly, but it is exciting to think about certain pairings, putting certain characters or, you know, certain situations together. And he says he can't give a more direct answer, but it is on his mind. He hasn't thought about a specific combination just yet. What I want to know is what do you think out of the 5 shows that we know that are in production? What do you think the most fruitful crossover would be?
Oh my God. If I'm being honest, I don't know if I could list off all 5 shows. It just being put on the spot. But I do think, like, honestly, you know what I want? I want a little either a Lower Decks or a Prodigy crossover with a live action show, so we get to see the live action, like the cartoon version of a live action character. That would be sick.
Yeah. Even just the 2 animations, like seeing the Prodigy style up against the Lower Decks style. Yeah, yeah.
That'd be so good. What about you? What do you think?
I don't know. That is a tough one. And I think that it's good that it's tough. For me, it's tough to answer because they're so spread out, you know, over eras and literally mediums.
Yeah.
But that, you know, it's Star Trek. I mean, they can figure out a way, no problem. So I don't know. Like, I'd like to see, maybe see like Captain Picard or, you know, now just Picard. Maybe meet like Captain Pike. You know, I'm sure that as the former captain of the Enterprise, he's had a lot of time to consider, you know, the legacy of the Enterprise and the ships that have borne that name over the years, and just seeing him, you know, see how another captain does it or see where it all kind of came from. I think that could be really interesting.
Also, just both those actors would be so amazing in the same scene together.
Yeah,
they would eat that up.
That'd be great. He was also asked about the future or the development of the Section 31 series, and there still isn't a lot of news on it. I think he said essentially, what did he say? Quote, "We're in an exciting place. I can't tell you anything yet, but it's very much alive." And it's very similar.
That is what I say when my relatives ask me what I'm doing now during holidays.
Yeah, and I bet your relatives have heard that. We've also heard this from Kurtzman a couple times because early in 2021, he also said the show was on track and he was very optimistic about it. So kind of seems like It exists. It's a registered IP, but I don't know how far we've gotten on that one.
Well, he can't just be going around telling people about Section 31. It has to be a little bit of a mystery.
Well, maybe
he has to keep the mystery alive.
That's true. I mean, it is a mysterious thing by its nature, but keeping it alive in the hearts of fans, having the fans, sort of pressure the network or the stars involved to get this thing moving. I think we can do a little bit of activism there, right? I know there's a lot of things riding on it. The putative star Michelle Yeoh has filmed 3 things while we've been talking. Like, she's very busy.
Yeah.
So it's hard to nail her down. Also, I think, I didn't know this, but Bo Young Kim and Erica Lippold, the writers, the Discovery writers who were the nominal showrunners, or at least the head writers for the show, have moved on to other stuff. So they're not working on it anymore. So it feels like there's these, little roadblocks that kind of keep slowing it down. But I think as a property, I'm convinced that it's a solid idea now. So I hope that they can get the let out and get this thing going at some point.
I would love I don't remember what title of the Cloverfield movie that they suddenly dropped on Netflix, but I would love that style drop for the Section 30. Can you imagine if it's
it just shows up.
Maybe not even a Thursday. Can you imagine? It's a Tuesday and suddenly everyone's like, so what's the Section 31 pilot doing on Paramount Plus?
Bam. Yeah, internet broken. I would live. Yeah.
I would live. Houston, I would be deceased.
Hopefully that will happen soon. I like that idea of the stealth drop. Also, with the expiration of the deal with Netflix for distribution, they're kind of free of that now. So if they were waiting because they didn't want to, Netflix had a deal that anything that was spun out of Discovery would also premiere on Netflix. That deal is now dead, and so they're free and clear to make all the money they want off of this, but they have to get it done.
I really, it's, again, I've said this before, I was a media studies major kind of in college, and I love just the general fisticuffs between the streaming services. And so I would love to see Paramount Plus, really land some punches, be surprise drop of the new series.
Yeah. We're
there. I want them to really start, I believe in them. Paramount Plus, you can do it. Let's see some good games.
Yeah. We started this talking about the familiarity and the comfortableness of the Thursday release, but now we're saying, forget that, blow it up. Come on,
Shake
Netflix.
Shake it up.
Just do it whenever. Come into my house and put it in my hands.
Netflix.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for sure.
Even, why? Because even Mr. Bezos couldn't unseat Netflix as, the top streaming platform. So I would love for Paramount Plus to come in at the 11th hour.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope, I'd like to see a little more competition there as well. Speaking of Bezos and Amazon, are you an Expanse fan?
I have not watched it, I will say.
Yeah, you should get on
Should I be watching it?
Yeah, it's very good.
I'll have to. I had somebody, I was thinking about starting Wheel of Time. But as we all know, I have been watching Seinfeld on Netflix, and so really that can't be interrupted for anything. It takes precedence.
The Expanse is really intense, so if you watch that, then you could cool down with a little Seinfeld after that.
Oh, that's smart. That's smart. I have been known to do that.
2 shows that are probably more dissimilar than any shows I could possibly think of. But yeah, little counter programming there.
Sure, why not? Just a nice little sitcom at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's like being in the jacuzzi and then going out and jumping in the frozen lake.
Exactly. You're in the sauna and then you get in the snow.
Yeah, that's how you do it. Well, we've just seen the 4th episode of the 4th season of Star Trek Discovery. It's an episode called All Is Possible, and we're here to talk all about it. But first, as always, a warning. We are setting a course for the spoiler zone listeners, so be warned. We're glad you've decided to join us, but if you haven't seen the episode, spoilers are incoming. The official synopsis for All Is Possible is Tilly and Adira lead a team of Starfleet Academy cadets on a training mission that takes a dangerous turn. Meanwhile, Burnham is pulled into tense negotiations on Ni'Var. This episode was written by Alan McElroy and Eric J. Robbins. McElroy is a screenwriter who worked as a producer on the second season of Discovery, and a supervising producer on the third, and a co-executive producer on the fourth. He also wrote the episodes An Obol for Karen, Perpetual Infinity, and Forget Me Not. As for Robbins, this is his first script for the screen, but he worked previously as a writer's assistant for the Discovery Writers' Room. The episode was directed by John Ottman. Ottman's only other directing credit is Urban Legend's Final Cut, but he has worked previously as a composer, having composed music for over 50 films, including many of the Fox X-Men films. We did it! We finally got a stardate in this episode. The stardate is 865661.2. And we don't really have any facts, as far as I could tell, any little facts about the episode, other than we've got some developments with Tilly. Obviously, the connection with the negotiation with Navarre, all of which we'll discuss. So, tell me your first impressions. What did you think about All Is Possible?
I really liked it. I thought, I think it was just last week that I was like, oh, this episode is showing us that they can do what feels like a one episode arc while keeping the overarching season long plot line together.
Yeah.
And that is how I felt this episode, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, not just for that, but that was the first thing I noticed, just from the jump. I was like, oh, they're just doing a really good job of it. And I kind of really appreciate it. I don't know why, because it's not like I'm going to watch episodes out of order, but I enjoy, like, I don't know, we're in the future. I want to learn a little bit more. I want to see some politics. I want to see some action, both of which we got in this episode.
That's true. I agree with you, and by agree, I mean I completely disagree with you in this specific case. The reason being is I know that we're going to be on to something really big next week. So big that we don't even really know anything about next week's episode or where it's going yet. But I felt like, there was two fairly good self-contained stories in this episode, but they both are essentially the end of the road of the developments we've seen in this season so far. So as far as them being like overarching things, other than kind of still being questioning of the president of the Federation's motives, I kind of felt like everything was a little too pat. We've been talking for the last 3 weeks about Tilly's new direction, or her seeking a new direction, and now she's got it, and she's going to be doing that. I'm not sure that she will be in the next couple episodes, although Mary Wiseman has said that she is on the show still. And then also, like, the whole thing with Navarre, like, that sort of wraps up pretty well. And as far as the conflict between the president and Michael Burnham, that seems to be at a much better point. Even looking towards a character like Book, who is still dealing with his grief, which, I don't know. I'd like to say that I knew last week that it was a little too pat. I think that we had mentioned that it was a little pat. I didn't think that they would immediately turn back around and go, no, that was like, premature enlightenment. He was obviously not out of his grief. I think that makes sense. But I think that his interactions with Culber have set him kind of on the road to recovery as well. So at the end of this fourth episode, I'm like, okay, like what's next? Like what are the other dangling plot threads? Like what are we going to get into going forward?
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I think it'll be super interesting to have Tilly like off the ship, though. I think that if I was gonna,
you think we'll follow her at Starfleet Academy?
To some extent, yeah. If it was like gun to my head prediction, I would say that we're going to learn a lot more about like current Starfleet through now. We have, we got Tilly undercover at the Academy.
It's a two-hander with Cronenberg and Tilly. Yeah,
exactly. So I'm excited to see like what happens there, because I think that my guess is that there'll just be some more tension within the Federation itself, especially with Burnham, and I'm interested to see like if Tilly finds what she's looking for at Starfleet Academy, but also if it's how different is it, like seeing those cadets that, I mean, like I said in the episode, it was like cadets a little rough around the edges for a bunch of Starfleet cadets.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. I doubt we'll ever see them again, but they were all sort of kind of faintly sketched. I loved when they, hey, we're doing a shuttlecraft episode. Obviously, there's a crash.
Yeah.
And then immediately Tilly's like, all right, everybody, do your share. We're going to complete this exercise. And so everybody just reads their character bios, my name is Johnson. I'm from Earth. I've never seen anything before. I'm a pig man. I don't like the emerald chain. Like, they're all just kind of reading off their things. It's like, okay, all right. Too bad the guy with no name died, but it was a little pat for me. Although we've been in, we've seen situations like that on Star Trek all the time. I really like your idea of using Tilly being in another location as a way to really build out, the world of the 32nd century. I hope they do that, and I think that's a good idea. And it's something that we kind of lost when Saru was hanging out on Kaminar, and it's like, oh, great, are we going to learn about Kaminar? No, he's just on the ship now. So hopefully Tilly, can get into more things, more trouble, back at home base. But I don't know. I guess I'm hopeful for the future. I guess I like the way that the plot lines were resolved, but I was just a little surprised that there weren't more sort of dangling threads going forward. And I was thinking too,
a little bit more of a cliffhanger for you.
Yeah. I really liked once we get to the end of the episode and Tilly's talking to Burnham, we really start to understand like why she's making the choice. And she's mentioned her mother before, but I really liked that idea of her achieving, and wanting somebody to tell her good job and realizing like that person that she's trying to please isn't around anymore and is never going to be around, and what that means for her future and what she should do. But I feel like a show like Deep Space Nine she just would have been wandering around the station, or like playing spring ball or something and like having these thoughts. And instead they, 90% of the show, she's running around on a location shoot, like on an ice planet, and then just crams all that in at the end. I wish that we had seen more of her thought process and the kind of, rising and falling action of her thoughts, like as she makes this decision. I mean, we still got there, but we just had kind of an okay shuttlecraft crash type story instead. There's no Galileo 7, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it was a bit more of a reveal than it was sort of putting the puzzle pieces together, if that makes sense. Yeah,
that's a good... Yeah, I think you're right. But my point is, like, I don't think it needed to be a reveal. Like, I think that we're in these characters' heads all the time, and so I don't think that they needed to, like, sandbag us on that. But I think that is... We've talked about this, in previous weeks. I think that is a good conclusion to the whole... I'm an overachiever. I've achieved some of this stuff, but do I still want what I want? And so having her take this kind of detour, I think is a really good idea.
I also think the scene, I think we were seeing really what we were watching is like Tilly putting in her 2 weeks notice, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
So it wasn't so much of like maybe a realization for us, but I think the scene, it wasn't about her putting the puzzle pieces together. It was the puzzle is finished and now she has to tell Michael.
Yeah. So maybe it's good that she takes a powder too, because putting her and Adira together, like, really affirmed for me, like, these are very similar characters. Like, maybe they should have started this process earlier, but Tilly and Adira and the way that they both are looking for a direction and the way that they're both unsure of themselves, it just really it really stood out in this episode. And so having her, having Adira admire Tilly and then kind of possibly stepping into her place as she leaves the ship, it's like, okay, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, I definitely wish I did like the episode, but I wish that we had been able to see more of Tilly and Adira together, especially after Culber was like, kind of talked to Tilly and was like, they just like look up to you. They want you to think they're doing a good job.
Yeah.
I thought that was so interesting because they seem to almost clash when they're on these missions, like together, even though they're both fantastic officers. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like Adira. I have yet to see them do anything that really like excites me so far. I mean, early days
Yeah.
yet for the character, but like we focus on them and like Tilly on this away mission, and in the meantime, Gray's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to a party and go hang out," and I'm like, "Follow Gray." Gray is like, is a trill mind inside of like a robot body. What does that mean for him? Like, what is
Yeah, what is
how
that
does
like?
yeah? And again, early days. I'm sure we'll get into that eventually, but that was like that's way more interesting for me than Adira and Tilly just yelling at some cadets. Who, by the
Also, the
way,
haircut.
yeah, well, yeah, the haircut was interesting. I want to know the story behind that.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
And by the way, these cadets, I know that this is the future, and the Federation is suffering from the burn and this like 150 years of depredation, but like they're all real paranoid and like borderline racist. And then I also like how
that was a lot, right?
after this is something I've always complained about with the Kobayashi Maru and all the psychological torture they put cadets through, but their lives are in danger. They've crashed on the planet from Star Trek 2009, and the guy's like, "This is a hollow simulation, right? Like, we should call for the Arch and like stop this thing." Until he's like, "What are you talking about?" But
Honestly, that would be me. I was watching that and I was like, the whole time, if I was in this situation as a cadet, I would be a little bit in the back of my head. Like,
program.
What if it's a hollow? Yeah. I'll be like, what if they're just testing us?
But Starfleet has done this. They gaslight their cadets. Which we might see. Oh boy, what if the Starfleet Academy series is just wall to wall gaslighting?
I'm there for it. I'm ready. Bring it on.
Well, it's just Academy. We don't know what era it's set. I mean, they should probably pick a different era. But what if they picked the 32nd century? And what if Tilly led up the show?
Wouldn't that be interesting?
Maybe they're prepping her for that.
I don't know. There's a pretty easy crossover for you. That makes sense.
Sure. Oh, the Kurtz. He's so wily. He won't let anything slip.
I feel like when you were describing that interview where he was kind of like, "Oh, I don't know, we can't do it without a reason." I was like, you sound like any Marvel producer and actor
right
on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, this is a yes. That means yes.
A pretty good poker player, but I know you're holding something. You got something. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he also was like, weren't they like, Spock is never going to be on this show, and then cut to like the season finale or whatever it was that first season, and everybody was like, "What?"
Yeah. Other than that,
but I love it. I'm not gonna fault him for it. I'd rather him keep the mystery alive.
There has to be
just like with Section 31. Yeah, I wanted to be a little shady.
Yeah. Other than that, I thought the planetary sequences were fine, I guess. I think they really like going outside, and, that's good. But I don't know. They literally did like a quicksand bit where like Adira's in the ice or whatever. Was it supposed to be the ice from the beginning of last season? Remember when they went to that planet and the ice is like alive or whatever? Because I didn't understand why that ice was like creeping up them. But anyway, they throw them a rope, and it's just like, yeah, this is just like a, jungle movie bit or whatever. But anyway, that's fine.
It's fine. I'm fine.
Let's talk about all the action in the 1970s den. I thought the decor was very interesting.
All the browns.
Yeah, the brown and the brick.
Listen, browns are back in.
Yeah. The literal red brick walls. This is clearly a skiing lodge somewhere in Vancouver. But so they're trying to get the Navarre and the Federation back together. And the Navarians have this clause where they're like, "Look, we'll join, but we want to be able to like pull the ripcord at any time and get out of this." And my immediate thought was, doesn't every Federation, you're not like forcing.
Me too. That's what I was like.
Worlds.
What do you mean this is unusual? What is the process for leaving the Federation if it's not just like, goodbye, we're done?
If it's not at will, yeah. And then the president essentially says that much that it's always been the case, but you can't leave though. It's like if your boss says, "Oh no, sure you can have the day off, but I'm going to call you and tell you to come in though."
Yeah, like what? And it made me, I mean, I love Star Trek, but I was been like, well, the Federation, if I love the Federation, if I was in the future, whatever, blah, 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 this and that. But it's like, then I was watching the scene and I was like, oh my God, like, they're right. If Starfleet is on the civilian committees or whatever that line was, if Starfleet doesn't allow you to leave, I would also leave the Federation if they were like, yeah, you can join and we'll like protect you, but also if you try to leave, it'll basically be like you're declaring war.
Yeah, that is chilling if that's the case. I maybe
Yeah.
possibly it was overstated, and I think one aspect of the world building that we need to sort of like, nobody from this show is writing like 50-page blogs like Michael Chabon is about like the background of his show, but I think that we can get the idea that that the Federation is, in a tough place right now, and so they need and want all the member worlds they can. Obviously, having Navarre join them would be a huge coup for them. So in that case, if that's the truth, then you say yes to whatever they want, right? Like you don't just take the win, but her taking this hard line. Now later in the episode, we find out that she's kind of doing some kind of power play, but I don't really understand what the purpose of the power play was. Like she benches Vance to bring Burnham in to give Burnham this win, but I don't get why she's playing the brinksmanship. Like what's the point if she got basically what she wanted anyway, which is Burnham essentially being the liaison between Navarre and the Federation? Why all the skullduggery?
Well, here's the thing. And I was thinking about this at the end, not at the end of the episode, but at the end when she and Burnham were kind of having their final conversation, which is that like she's the president of the Federation. Burnham's been there for a while. Burnham's been doing some good work. But like I don't remember the president's name, but she doesn't know Burnham, right? Like if you took Kirk, let's talk about Star Trek 4, okay? You take Kirk and you put him in San Francisco and he's like, I know what I'm doing, and then you're like, no you don't, and you sound crazy. Like
Yeah.
she doesn't know Burnham. She doesn't know, like, she knows of her, but she doesn't know what she's going to do. So I think part of it, or at least if I were the president of the Federation, part of it would just be that, like, she still doesn't know. It's pretty unpredictable, I think, to her what Burnham is going to do. But also, she knows, because she's a smart politician, that Burnham. Also, side note, they're just giving out citizenship on Navarre if you're from Vulcan in the past. That was an interesting line.
Yeah, maybe they'd invite you to reapply. But
Yeah, she was like, I'm a citizen of Navarre. And I was like,
she's
okay,
just assuming that, yeah, hey, look, my dad was Sarek, so that name must hold weight still.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously. Well, she's a smart politician, so she knew that a Burnham being a captain and also having a Vulcan background, it'd be a very easy way to make a compromise. And, like Burnham said, neither of them, Vulcan or the Federation, could get what they wanted because the voters wouldn't support it.
Yeah.
And this is a democracy.
Yeah.
Really.
That's interesting. So let's talk about democracy. Nominally,
I'm ready.
Nominally, the Federation has been a democracy every time we've seen it on screen, except for the Terran Empire. That's not a democracy. But they've never really bothered to get into it too much because it's so tough. Don't you want to see aliens and ray guns? Like, what do you really want to do? A lot of statecraft in Star Trek.
Bring
and this
me
kind
the
of
aluminum foil bikinis.
Yeah, right, exactly. This feels like a sort of tentative steps in that direction. Having Burnham confront the president about her initiative and how it represents more the people who support her, or the people that she has to deal with than necessarily like the Democratic votes or whatever. I thought that was really interesting. I think that using the word third party is very charged when you decide to say, what if a third party comes in and provides a little bit of context, and ideas.
Yeah, I agree with you, because if Burnham is anything, she's not a third party to either party.
Yeah.
Like, right. I felt like the point of it was that in theory, she's half of both parties.
Yeah, yeah. She does have, I guess, an outside perspective, though, and she's not caught up in politics. But the fact that they would kind of go there, I thought was really interesting, and I wonder where else we're going.
I think it's a great direction. I love it. I had to a couple of weeks ago. This is you'll see where I'm going with it. But my friend said something to me. She asked me like some kind of like semi-political question, like, would you do this or that if in a situation? And we talked about it for a while, and I won't say what it was because it's a little polarizing, so I'm not going to announce it. But I was like to her, I was like, this would make a really good Star Trek episode. And she went, really? And it was the first time I've ever had to like explain to somebody like, yeah, Star Trek a lot of the time is about like, these like moral quandaries or like even like um political rights and wrongs or just like questions.
Yeah.
And I brought up um, obviously data, but it was so interesting because I was like, I realized, and she's seen like a few episodes of Lower Decks with me, and that's the extent of her Star Trek experience.
Sure.
And so it was interesting. All of a sudden, I was like, oh, we haven't had something like that in kind of what feels like, well, we've had a bit of it in Disco or whatever, but we haven't had something quite as serious or straightforward as an episode like Measure of a Man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope they lean into it.
That's really interesting. I was having a similar conversation with my girlfriend after we watched this episode, and I was talking about how I missed the chewing gum forehead aliens. Like I missed how
Yeah.
Star Trek storytelling used to be that they would go somewhere to a planet, and because you don't have a lot of money, it's clearly it's an alien race, but they've got weird ears or something like that. And then whatever their society is, it's an allegory for something in our society.
Mm-hmm.
And like they haven't done that as much. I think they're spending a lot of money on Klingon makeup and Orion makeup and stuff. So like tonight they fought like a tentacle monster, which you don't often see in Star Trek on TV. And like I kind of miss them, meeting other cultures and exploring ideas about our culture through those. But over the course of my conversation with you, I realized possibly they're wielding that and turning that around. And if we can't be criticizing like, the random chewing gum people on their planet every episode, maybe they're going to take that exploration and like bring it back to the Federation, which is nominally, us, quote unquote, Western society. Like maybe we can really start to really introspect and let the political questions we ask be more about our situation and not like, oh boy, space apartheid, that's the worst, like deal with the problems that we're dealing with right now in 21st century America. Hopefully that's what they're doing.
Yeah,
I will trade you the chewing gum for that.
I agree with you. I love that. I think they've towed the line a bit on subjects like that, but yeah, it would be really interesting to see if they commit to it for like this full season. That would be amazing. Because I even like think that these
even like doing the mirror universe is still that's still too removed. I think that's more like, well, I think we're finding out that like negative and sort of fanatical elements are more entrenched in our common, quote unquote society than we want to admit, but it's still externalized. But like having literally like, all right, we're in the club now, but the president is doing this and we don't know what's going on. And how do we make alliances with other countries and other nations? Like, I think that could be more about where we are right now than, a planet that has computers calculate how many people are dead. And then they have to walk into suicide booths. And that's Vietnam, I guess. Yeah.
Well, and then it's also like, maybe this is an exaggeration, the mental gymnastics to get from space apartheid is bad to also Earth apartheid is bad is maybe a stretch for some people. I don't know who those people are, but maybe it would be nice to have the direct, I would love a direct, like you said, really looking inwards at the Federation. If the Federation represents, like you said, sort of Western society, it might be nice to look inwards a little bit more.
I wish blogs had existed in the 1960s so I could find out how people reacted to Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. Were they like, wow, and they were white on one side and black on the other side? Or if they were like, all right, we get it. We're not children. What is this crap? Do you know what I mean? Because I think if you ask somebody who was alive now that watched it then, 40, 50 years of them just being in society would kind of change their memory of it, But, you say that people aren't that smart. I think your average TV watcher is a lot smarter than they used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely don't think, I don't mean to say that like, oh, it's people are too dumb to draw the direct, flashing line between the space apartheid and the Earth apartheid. But it does kind of give you it's comfortable. It makes you feel better to watch the aliens be racist.
Yeah.
And then watch, Kirk in this magical future world on Earth where in theory, like, money is gone and racism is gone and all this stuff is gone. It's very easy to watch episodes like that. Yeah. And episodes looking inwards maybe it's a little bit more difficult to really like look at what you're grappling with inside of yourself. And, especially I think for, not to get too serious, but especially I think for like white people who, don't think they're racist, but like society teaches you all of these things and you have to really like combat that to be anti-racist. And so I think that it's kind of the same thing where it's like back in the day, it was maybe easier to make the metaphors be like off planet. It was easy to watch. Yeah. And so maybe now, like you said, TV audiences, they're very smart. They're ready for something a little bit more difficult looking inwards. Did that all make sense?
Yeah.
Was that too Gen Z?
No, that made sense. It's all academic anyway, because in a month, Picard is going to be in the DS9 episode past tense with his crew. Like they're going back to the early 21st century. So I'm sure that's going to be very not much of a metaphor as far as attacking some of these themes. But yeah.
Well, I'm stoked.
I'm stoked too. I'm trying to think of what else to talk about. I like the fact that just to give us some credit, all the things that we've hoped for or wished for or have kind of said were going on have come to pass. Like Culber is just the counselor now. And I think that it's great that they did not one but two characters, going directly to him and getting his counseling. I thought that was really great. Also, they pulled the trigger finally on the metaphor of the president being mixed race, part Bajoran, part Cardassian. Burnham specifically calls that out. I still don't think it's a very good metaphor because that's not really how people don't get together because of it's the end of the war. Now let's have sex and make a mixed race baby. That's not how people's lives work. But I get the kind of clumsy metaphor. We talked about how our characters are cavemen who need to read a lot of books real fast. And now Burnham is literally in a situation where she has to know like the last 1,000 years of like Navarian, Vulcan, Romulan history. So she can be, a good liaison with Starfleet. So she's got her work cut out for her. All these things are sort of coming to pass as has been foretold. So go us.
Go us.
Something that was a bit of a, I don't want to say wet fart, but I said wet fart, was the whole thing with Javini and like there being tension over whether she was going to receive the punishment that I guess Burnham felt that she deserved. And then we get a note that she's sentenced to hard meditation. She's really going to be meditating. And Burnham's totally satisfied with that. And like the Burnham I know, I kind of find it hard to believe that she's satisfied with her just, meditating all the time.
And
that's her punishment.
Completely missed that line.
Yeah, that was right at the end of the episode.
Oh my gosh. I didn't have the subtitles on this episode.
Oh,
and I thought that I could do it. And I did have moments where I was like, the audio processing, it's not quite going through. That's crazy.
Well, I always thought it was a weird beat, and maybe they realized it was a weird beat and decided to close it off really fast. But who knows? Maybe I think we'll definitely see that character again. So maybe she breaks out and Burnham's got to go after her again or something like that. I don't know. Here's something you don't need. Here's something you don't need your subtitles on for.
Oh, good.
Did you see that there was a horizontal wipe near the end of the episode?
No.
What is this, Star Wars? Yeah, after Tilly gets off
I can't believe I missed that.
They beam her off the planet and they go back to the station or whatever, and there's like a bottom to top like wipe. It's like, what? I've never seen a wipe transition in Star Trek before.
Anything but Star Wars. That is so funny. I kind of love that for them. They're getting silly in iMovie.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're going crazy. Guys, I just downloaded this new pack. Check it out. All right, we're going to do this. Star Trek, Star Wipe.
It wipes from the bottom to the top.
Right. Anything else you can think of? You know what? I did not enjoy so much this episode watching it, but I enjoyed discussing it with you. You've helped me see that. For whatever the drama was, they're definitely laying a lot of track, I think, for what's coming up in the future. Anything else you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I do. And here's the thing: is I'm not locking away the character names very quickly this episode, but the Vulcan president,
yes,
is president again. So nice this episode. Saru's like, I would love if he would teach me how to meditate sometime, and she's like, say less, show me those hands.
Let's play slapjack. Yeah,
literally. They're playing like.
Do you think that they are setting up a connection between Saru and Tiana? A deeper connection?
I don't explain what you mean by deeper connection.
Well, just because two characters like.
Did I notice the eye contact and the sitting very closely on the meditation pillows? Yes, I did.
I don't think that every character. Yeah, two characters have a satisfying discussion and they have to go bang. I'm not saying that, but
Okay.
I think Saru as a character, we're also kind of looking for a new direction and story for this character.
Yeah, I think clearly they get along. Clearly there's some mutual respect.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting, as always, a soft spot from me for the Vulcans. They're my favorite. And so I did think it was super interesting. I also thought it was super, super cute when he like kind of opened his eyes back up like a kid, and she's like, okay, so I was supposed to be closed. And I'm like, I bet she knew to do that, because every single Vulcan child, I bet, opens their eyes back up because they're all equally as sarcastic as their parents.
Right.
And they're like, mm.
This is part of the ritual. I admonish you for opening your eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. I would love that. I would love to see that. I think they're all, like you said, and maybe this is more, maybe they are working on kind of an allegory for like current times. It seems like they're all a little bit lost. I think I've said this before, but we're not coming out of the pandemic. I don't want to say that. What's the Winston Churchill quote about being it's after the middle but far from the end? I don't know what it is.
Something
clearly,
like that,
I studied history. So maybe this is, maybe that's how they're relating to our current problems, is all these characters like, well, where do I go? It's 2 years have gone by and now I know what happened.
I can see that. Yeah. I think that fits.
Like I had to explain this past weekend, cause I work remotely. And I've always worked remotely because I was hired in just after I graduated college in the middle of the pandemic. And I saw a family friend and she was like, oh, when are you going back into the office? And I was like, I don't think we will. And I've never worked in the office, so I don't really want to. Yeah. And she was like, never? And I was like, no, I got hired, a year and a half ago or whatever it was. And she was like, oh my God. So like, maybe they're just doing a good job and we're a little too, we just don't want to look at it in the face, because I don't.
Yeah. It's interesting that, the role of Star Trek can change in that way, because in the 1960s, while people are, maybe not in the late 60s, but, very early or recently, people are getting hit with fire hoses, at demonstrations. And now, Captain Kirk is working with a multi-racial crew. And so it's sort of a fantasy, but maybe now it's like we need a little reality in our fantasy. We need to see
exactly. We need a
our
little bit more. We
characters
need help. I need the help
dealing
right
with
now.
what we're dealing with.
Yeah, I don't need the fantasy, of it's all over and it's perfect. I need a little bit of the, oh, they're lost too. I will say something a little personal, and not that I don't just get on this podcast and just run my mouth every week. But I will say that Thursdays, I also have therapy on Thursdays. And so today I was in therapy, and then I go to watch Star Trek, and then Tilly was in therapy, and I was like, what direction are we going?
Sure. Yeah, therapy definitely still exists, 32nd century for sure.
Yeah, it would, it would have to,
Whether or not Gene believed that was true.
Exactly. It's, if you're going to be on all of a sudden the space station's falling apart, and the manager pulls a phaser on you. You need to talk that out a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Gene,
just some processing.
Gene grew because he went from like, oh no, we'll have colonies where we keep the mentally insane and we'll shoot lasers into their heads to fix them, to like literally having, a counselor on the bridge of the Enterprise D. Now, to be fair, she was going to have like 4 boobs or whatever, but like, that's growth.
Well, and did she not?
I guess we never got to count them, but
anyway. I take it back.
We'll end it right there before we get any worse. That's our show for this week. And thank you for joining us, listeners. And if you like what you hear, you can follow us on Facebook or on Twitter at EISTPOD for updates and to get notified when new episodes of both Enterprising Individuals, our main show, and Discoverage, this show, are released. And you can tweet to us on the show by using the hashtag Discoverage or email us at EISTPOD. Drop us a line. And while you're on the internet, why not head to your listening platform of choice and subscribe to our show feed. Give us a rating and a review because it really helps us out. And if you want to help the show grow, stop by our Patreon page at patreon.com/EISTpod. And as always, if you like the show, tell a friend. Discoverage will return on December 16th for the 5th episode of this season of Star Trek Discovery, and we don't know anything about the episode just yet, but we'll be here next Thursday to cover it. We'll be going live once again at 8 p.m. Central Time, so join us then. You can follow us on Twitter or Facebook at EISTpod to get notified when we're live and broadcasting. And in the meantime, check out our main show, Enterprising Individuals, at enterprisingindividuals.com. Every Wednesday on the show, I and a special guest discuss in excruciating detail a selected episode from a Star Trek series. We also have news from the Trek Sphere and interviews with special guests, and the show is currently on holiday hiatus, but you can access all 6 seasons of our previous episodes at enterprisingindividuals.com or wherever you get your podcasts. In the meantime, may I suggest that you check out Generations Geek at generationsgeek.com, where Ella and sci-fi writer Scott Pearson talk geeky topics. On their most recent episode, they sit down with author Christopher D. Abbott to talk about the cinematic exploits of Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. Also, Scott blogs about the work he's doing in the sci-fi and writing space and other nerdy topics. You can find out more at generationsgeek.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Ella, thanks as always for joining me to talk about tonight's episode of Discovery. And I guess I just said, but remind people where they can find you online.
Thank you. Yeah, boosting my ego as always. My home podcast is Generations Geek. We have some more fun interviews coming up. I don't say this every week because it makes me feel a little bit like a capitalist to advertise it, but I do work with a man who some know as Frage over at Star Trek Unlimited. And so I post on their social media accounts pretty frequently now. So it's super fun. So everybody head over there and we can have a discussion that's not listening to just me and Aaron. We can talk on Twitter.
And what's the Twitter handle again?
At Star Trek Unlimited.
At Star Trek Unlimited. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, check that out. You can find all the shows on the Just Enough Trope Network at Just Enough Trope on Twitter. And that is it for us. Thanks for listening, and we are signing off. This is Aaron for Ella saying, live long and prosper.